No one could halt the Invarian Empire after it had captured 50 solar systems over 3 centuries. To them, their spacecraft were the most formidable in the cosmos, and its weaponry could wipe out whole planets. While Admiral Zealand stood atop the worlds, their troops never shown mercy or fear. His forearms were crossed as he stood on the command deck of the Imperial Dreadnought. While he saw the planet below Terrius on the view screen, 4 of them were behind him did not care whether they fought. None of their fights ever. Zexalon described his voice like rustling dry leaves in his status report. Collaboratively, Subcommander Vectra lowered her exoskeleton head and bowed. Their orbital defenses are operating at 20% capacity, our first. The ground forces have reported negligible opposition as the wave has pierced the atmosphere. The sections of Zexalon's lips twitched in what passed for a grin among the Nelvarians, and 3 hours remain till complete capitulation. 4 reasonable admirals may be ready to integrate protocols in the past. When Invarians had come, they had attacked, and the defenders had fought and died. After a certain number of planets had passed, the survivors would be recruited to labor in the vast hive. No matter how long it was, the Invarian fleet admiral had never been repelled. Zexalon signaled to the sensor operator, saying, "We're picking up a transmission from across the system." "Admiral, it seems to have big compound eyes directed at the officer during a distress call." A cautionary tale written in a tongue we are unfamiliar with rather than the territories. Earlier, the primary screen shifted to depict a little ship cruising at great speed. Swiftly exit the system, the ship was unlike anything they had encountered previously. It was utilitarian, streamlined, and had no unnecessary room or... The message that Zexalon requested is translated by ornamental elements after a moment of words appearing on focus on the screen. "Here we are, the scout craft Aurora from You have attacked the Terrian people without provocation, and the United Earth Alliance will not stand for it. Threatening nonviolent cultures, you have been forewarned." Zexalon produced a clicking noise that found it entertaining that they cautioned us about scanning the vessel Vextra while she was at the controls. Tiny scout spacecraft with few armaments, powerful engines, and just 4 living beings on board Admiral Zexalon. Kill it. It has already accelerated to the speed of light. Brushed off the issue, as it holds no importance by waving his right arm. Another species that will eventually find its role in our empire will keep on invading, just as Terrius IV foretold. In little over 3 hours, the Invarians resumed their march across and annexed another globe to their expanding dominion. Their next 10 victories were already in the works and nothing could stop them. Upon reaching the boundary of known space, 2 weeks later, Lieutenant Frank Mason devised that the Aurora hurried back to Earth, its crew anxious after putting tremendous pressure on the engines to get home as soon as possible. Captain Lisa Reeves nodded, acknowledging that she had darkened the last leap that Frank would reveal to the tiny bridge crew in 30 seconds. She looked exhausted with bags under her eyes, from not getting enough sleep since they had all witnessed Terrius IV's downfall. As communications officer Jeff Holland put it, "Those aliens just took the planet 6, he added. "I still can't believe what we saw. There are a billion individuals who are just like that, and they've done it 50 times. Lisa's jaw stiffened. Diane Chin, a scientific officer, glanced up from her desk as was previously reported by Tyrian transmissions. They are a hive species, and the Terrian referred to them as Invarians based on my interpretation of their distress sounds. They are extremely well organized and unwavering in their purpose. They refuse to negotiate or accept surrender," Lisa remarked. "Our records must be seen by the Security Council. Even though Aurora rose from border, command scouts greeted them almost instantly as they made their last jump close to Earth's outer defense line. The ship Aurora was sternly told, 'You're 3 weeks early from your exploration mission. Explain your premature return.' Hi there, this is Captain Lisa Reeves. Authorized user Sierra 97 speaking over the radio. The Terrian system has been invaded by a hostile extraterrestrial species, and Delta has seen this and has requested an emergency meeting with after a protracted wait. The Security Council finally gave you the go-light. You will be met upon arrival by Admiral Joe Garcia, who has approved you for direct approach to Earth Defense Station Alpha." Garcia, a towering figure with silver hair and grave wrinkles around his eyes, had battled in the war between Proxima Centauri and had witnessed his fair share of fighting. But as he saw the footage of the Anvarian attack on the Aurora, his expression darkened and he said, "How many ships would—" At the end of the tape, he asked, "How many do you think were in their fleet?" Lisa took a long breath and said, "At least 200. Garcia researched the strategic options, but their primary fear was that they were nearly as massive as our greatest space station. While showcasing the Anvarian ship's state-of-the-art equipment, those energies Sir Diane advanced based on what appeared to be weapons that were completely new to her. I am convinced that they will eventually invade Earth's habitable space due to their aggressive behavior and rapid expansion. It is imperative that the Council observes the Admiral's upright posture within 6 months. Humanity has experienced a period of relative calm following the Proxima battle, yet we have persisted in constructing. There are 60 vessels in our fleet that are now prepared for action, and another 20 are on their way." "Finished. Would that be sufficient?" Frank said in a low voice. Garcia refused. "Captain Reeves, your team has done Earth a great favor by allowing us to prepare for the next day. Please respond directly." As the members of the Security Council perused the recordings made by the Aurora, 12 delegates representing the United States of Earth sat in utter shock as they witnessed the Anvarians systematically dismantle the Terrian defenses. They showed no compassion, they muttered. No interest on the part of South American Union Councilor Olivia Martinez in diplomacy. According to Councilor Ben Thompson, their biochemistry indicates a swarm mind. The Pacific Alliance, they might not even grasp the idea of negotiating to the same extent as we do. Admiral Garcia, with his hands crossed behind his back, stood before them and said, "We must mobilize the fleet. It is imperative that all shipyards immediately go into emergency mode and speed up the building of all ships currently in the works. I'm referring to a state of war, as stated by North American Coalition Councilor Ryan Foster. According to Garcia, these Anvarians have successfully colonized 50 worlds that they have never before. We're halted, we must take the lead, and the Council decided unanimously to mankind started the greatest military buildup in its history, sweeping shipyards across the solar system in preparation for war within days. System operated continuously, with reserve corps being summoned to training sessions for active service personnel were expedited on the bridge of the recently USS Defender, a newly commissioned vessel, had its commands examined by Commander Eric Wells. The Defender, a cutting-edge spacecraft, transported experimental weaponry and defense technologies. Lieutenant Amber Garrett, who had never been field-tested before, reported for duty, sir, and a young entering the bridge, a lady with short brown hair, greeted the new tactical leader, Lieutenant. "Officer, I graduated first in my class from the Academy. The establishment of a front defense line at Proxima Centauri Amber studied will need the finest that we can send out tomorrow. Are you certain that we can thwart their plans, based on the mission briefing she has on her tablet? As far out as the stars could be seen via the window, Anvarian's Eric. A relentless power was advancing on Earth, annihilating anything that stood in its way. Lieutenant, we will demonstrate to them why it was a mistake for them to encounter humans for the first time 3 months ago." With each passing day, the human fleet became more formidable as the Aurora transmitted its warning to Earth. All hands were on deck as additional ships bolstered the defenses at Proxima Centauri, where tests were conducted on armaments and strategies were developed. The USS Defender's command chair was occupied by Eric Wells, who was at rest. Had settled into a routine for him and his men as they prepared for the impending battle. Eric examined the new information suggests that the Nalvarians have taken over 2 other systems and are drawing near to knocking upon hearing the word enter. He was interrupted from his train of thinking and summoned Lieutenant Amber. Upon entering, Garrett proclaimed, "Sir, we've received new orders from Admiral Garcia." Eric seized the data pad that she was holding. Suddenly, he glanced up in shock as he read, "They want us to go beyond Proxima into the Yao Arcturus." He got to his feet and headed for the star, saying, "Yes, sir, intelligence believes the Anvarians will pass through there next." He had a wall map of Arcturus, which, being so distant from Earth's typical patrol routes, would leave the Defender entirely alone on the brink of Amber clarified that our mission in orbit is to install early warning beacons and collect data on the movements of the Invarian race. Might be wise to watch their moves without getting involved. When should we depart? Admiral wants to know. We will be leaving in 6 hours, and Eric gave the team the go-ahead to notify Chief Engineer Brad. Amber was hesitant to answer the door when you asked Miller whether we needed our new stealth systems turned on. We're going to be the first humans to confront these extraterrestrials head-on, Commander. I know, Lieutenant, so let's not be the first at long last. The USS Defender stepped off the edge of the Arcturus system, gracefully descending the speed of light. System that included 2 livable worlds, each of which had a small colony of disgruntled aliens among the several species tested. Not a single one had effective stealth mechanisms activated. Engineer Brad Miller said from his station that we are still operating silently while Eric examined the main view screen for any indication of. Kelly Wright, a communications officer on board the Invarian ships, shook her head in disapproval. The news of Terrius's disappearance has traveled across the colonies, and I've been overhearing a lot of worried voices, sir. Get us close to the outer asteroid belt, Eric said, so we can mitigate the defense anxiously waited for the crew's signature, which would take 3 days. Earth's fate rested on the data they would collect from the mission, but they were prepared for it. On the 4th day, the bridge erupted in alarms as several ships dipped below the water's surface near the system's periphery, causing Amber to flash. Eric shifted to his command chair on the news that her voice remained unwavering, despite the apparent terror she was experiencing. A horrifying picture unfolded as 20 enormous spacecraft materialized on the view screen at maximum magnification at the system's periphery. They possessed an angular, insect-like appearance, adorned with armor plate and weapon attachments. They were followed by an enormous monster, twice as large as any ship ever constructed by humans. That's the inevitable, Eric said. Clandestinely approaching the same flagship that was captured on the Aurora are similar to Arius. Amber from the inner planets reported a typical formation while Eric observed the extraterrestrial fleet. Seamlessly coordinated their movements without exchanging any signs that the defense may pick up on. It seems like they were all thinking the same thing. Start documenting every single thing. Eric commanded Earth has to know precisely what the Invarians are up against, including their ships, weaponry, and tactics. Once they got close to the first settlement on Arcturus II, the planet's defenses were severely lacking. With just a tiny defense force and orbiting platforms, nothing could halt the impending assault, Sir Kelly yelled out. The colony is pleading for aid, and I'm hearing their distress sounds. Eric firmly grasped the arms of his chair, their directives crystal clear: watch but not participate. Use the data they collected to their advantage, he said, and ultimately save many lives in the future. The bridge crew stood silently as the Invarian said what seemed like a betrayal. The ships launched a systematic and effective assault, first disabling the orbiting platforms before touching down Earth. The colony's main settlement was encircled by ground forces inside 1 hour. Their troops moved like insects. As he observed the tactical display, security head Paul Evans made a note of it. Avoid danger or demonstrate empathy for victims because they fail to see each soldier as an individual, as Amber pointed out. Partial view while the assault progressed, Eric beheld an anomaly, and he subsequently zoomed in on their command destroyer. Invarian warship broke formation and thereafter retreated as per his command. They've seen something when they shift their focus from the primary assault to the outside system with a comprehensive scan of Sector 7. Eric informed Amber that she may use her console. Quickly, sir, there appears to be a tiny vehicle attempting to evade the system. Its members resembled Nelvarian refugees. There was no mistaking the destroyer's intentions as it sped towards the ship. Eric rose slowly to his feet, and it was made quite clear that you were to stay concealed and gather intelligence. But 20 individuals on the bus who were only trying to make it to safety. Sir Amber, Eric decided to put weapons online and strategize while he waited for orders. Brad checked with the engineering commander for our instructions, and he knew they were for an intercept course. Eric interrupted him, but we will not stand by and do nothing as they slaughter defenseless people. So he resorted to the under the command of Lieutenant Sam Cooper. We will be led at full speed as the defending retreated from it was a stunning vessel, the cutting edge of Earth's technology, its engines roaring to life as it emerged from its concealed location. Concealed within a powerful and swift warship, the Invarian destroyer has opened fire on the cargo Amber, informed that the destroyer's engines had taken a direct hit, rendering them inoperable in space. A system of weapons Eric gave the command to fire, and the main guns of the defense were ready to fire for. For the first time in combat, pinpoint energy beams blasted through space and hit the extraterrestrial craft. After a direct strike from Amber, the Invarian ship trembled as its weapon mounts detonated, and the crew stated that their primary weapon systems were down. By using her console channel, Kelly was able to open a channel to the transport that Eric had requested. Greetings, this is Earth Vessel Defender Commander Eric Wells. We are here to provide a hand. The Invarian warship, albeit damaged, was preparing for an emergency docking as it turned to face them on the screen. Amber warned of evasiveness and the continued risk of their powering supplementary weapons. Maneuvers that Eric instructed to proceed towards the truck that the Defender was accompanying remarkably nimble given its size. It skillfully sidestepped the alien's retaliatory shot as it drew near the civilian. Transfer, we're within the range for emergency transport, Sam stated from the captain's seat. Start the evacuation of the vehicle that Eric had arranged and lead me to the primary Invarian fleet. With the screen slicing to reveal an extraterrestrial fleet of spacecraft, approaching the planet broke off and turned towards the location of the defending, they saw us. Pole said, "How much longer until the transport is evacuated?" And Eric nodded in agreement. "Minutes at the present pace," Kelly said. "We won't have 4 minutes." Amber, perusing her 3 Invarian readings, stated ships rapidly approaching. Eric took a different course of action when the final civilian was while the ship sped out towards Earth at top speed. The bridge went dark and everyone on board that they had exposed themselves to the enemy. Therefore, this was now more than simply an intelligence job. Not only had the shock faded, but they had also accomplished something no one had ever done before. Admiral Zexlon stood perfectly after the victory over the Invarians while he rewatched the footage for the 3rd time. He noticed that one of his destroyers had been destroyed by a single human ship and got away on the cargo ship, an occurrence that hadn't occurred in 300 years. Play it again. The Nelvarian invasion army had never been defeated by any species in the history of conquest. He gave the command, and the inevitable bridge staff dutifully carried it out. A big screen displayed the human craft, bursting from the asteroid field, unleashing a barrage of accurately targeted missiles before swiftly evading capture. "What have we been made aware of this ship?" Subcommander Vextra, whose Exelon had approached with a datapad. "The weapon signatures are not matching any known designs in our database." "Strange. These people seem to employ a directed energy technique that we have never experienced. It seems like they're from the Sol system, but we don't have much information on them, Admiral. According to our long-range readings, they do have colonies in neighboring systems, but they aren't exactly a dominant force in this particular sector." Space Exelon constructed a spacecraft that could withstand intense pressure and harming one of ours. It seems to be a solitary case, Admiral, maybe their most sophisticated ship. The remainder of their fleet probably doesn't represent much of a danger, and Zexelon still wasn't persuaded in the documenting the human ship's deliberate movement, pinpoint accuracy of assault, and flawless execution of escape. Fortunately, he swiftly instructed us to change our direction. "So we will go forward." Admiral Vextra's jaws dropped in shock as he went straight to their home system. "Our planned conquests can wait. I'm interested in learning more about our growth might be thwarted if these humans acquire other vessels similar to this one." Preparations Zexelon averted their gaze from the screen. "No other species has ever had the guts to test us, and you'll see what happens when people refuse to listen to reason." The USS Defender, Dr. Judy Ross, and her team hurried back to Earth, pushing the plane's engines to their typical limits in the medical bay. Their primary focus was providing medical attention to the 23 migrants they had rescued from the ship, where families with little children were escorted by Commander Eric Wells following. He discovered the evacuees gathered together, still terrified but thankful to be alive, while he sent his report to Earth Command. You were the one who approached a little child who was no older than 6 years old. The girl's life was spared when Eric went down to her level, and my entire team pitched in to help. When our mother charged forward, we feared for our lives since no one ever challenges the Invarians. Her eyes were tear-stained, but grateful. Eric nodded. Feeling uneasy with the compliments, he remained uncertain about his decision-making process. His commands had been crystal obvious at this point. Earth's military might was known to the Invarians. Therefore, the element of surprise was his communicator blasted, "Commander, we're getting a message from someone who is very important," the voice of Kelly said. "Admiral Garcia, I am on my way," and Eric responding, "Commander." The bridge crew stood at attention as the visage of Admiral Garcia appeared on the main screen. "Wells," the Admiral started his grave expression, "I've read your report, and I thought your acts were clearly contrary to your directives." "Yes, Sir Eric, I accept full responsibility." "Duty," Garcia went on to say, "the information you collected on the Invariant capacity is priceless, and thanks to your choice, the 23 citizens who were saved are still alive." Eric waited in anticipation of the inevitable rebuke. "Our long-range sensors have picked up on a shift in the Invariant fleet's course." A shiver ran down the spine of the spacecraft when Garcia declared, "They've altered course? They're heading directly for the Sol system. Bridge Crew Earth was now their destination." Eric inquired at what point in time they will reach us. "We are speeding up our response time," Garcia said 3 weeks ago. "We require additional time for preparations, but what are your instructions, Sir Garcia?" "We are becoming nearer. I need you to go to the screen and show them that you've seen them in action." "You defeated them, Commander." "Sir, the defending is just one ship strong. Therefore, you must use every measures at your disposal to impede their progress." "I'm sending word that the Invarians have a whole fleet, so you won't be fighting alone. 3 more vessels will rendezvous with you around Alpha Centauri. The 2 of you will constitute our primary defense force." Recognizing the immense magnitude of the work at hand, Eric nodded and said, "We'll do whatever it takes." "Commander Garcia, Admiral Earth is relying on you," and the image faded. "You all heard the Admiral," Eric said as he turned to face his crew, who were waiting for his reply. Adding, "We're going back into the fight against their entire fleet," added Sam, steering the ship. "We don't need to defeat them," Eric said. "Just slow them down." Descend, giving Earth additional time to be ready. Amber took the lead, explaining, "I've been studying our interaction with their destroyer. Their vessels could be deceiving. Its targeting systems appear to have trouble keeping up with the quick shifts in direction and their inability to respond swiftly to unforeseen strategies." Head engineer Brad added, "I believe I can enhance a further 15% improvement in our shield efficiency, and I have some suggestions for enhancing our weapon systems." Eric felt a burst of energy. Due to his crew's impeccable reputation, they were apprehensive that anybody may be the task at hand. He gave the command to set course for Alpha Centauri, indicating a maximum speed of 3. 3 Earth warships awaited the Valiant when the Defender arrived at the rendezvous point near Alpha Centauri a few days later. New ships, the Dauntless and the Resolute, were constructed with the most cutting-edge technology available on Earth. According to Captain Susan, inviting the other commanders to assemble on her ship, Rodriguez of the Valiant served as the senior officer of the tiny fleet. Upon their arrival in the Valiant's conference room, Susan announced, "We've all read your report, Commander Wells. The Chamber, you're the only one who's faced these Nelvarians and lived to tell about it." Eric summoned a hologram visual representation of the Invarian fleet demonstrating their flawless synchronization in flight. Components of a whole, rather as separate ships, which may be one of their shortcomings. "What are you proposing?" said Dauntless skipper Neil Wilson, who was facing some unexpected circumstances. "It's possible that our fights are unpredictable." Just as Eric verified, Captain Lavera Simmons of the Resolute compared the 4 ships' holograms with their complete. "We don't have to win this suicide mission, fleet. It's not a combat. The only thing we need to do, as Eric told them, is slow them down, strike them, and then run away." The 4 commanders spent hours formulating their plan before being forced to halt and reorganize by formation. The system's vast asteroid field would act as cover, allowing them to launch attacks from all directions without ever colliding. Susan stared at each of them for almost a minute as the meeting came to a close. The fate of the planet is in our hands. They went back to their ships and got ready for fight, buying themselves as much time as possible. Every hour of the day and night, fine-tuning their weapons and shields. Everyone was aware of the stakes. Eric examined the most recent sensor data while staked out on the Defender's bridge. The Ovarian fleet is expected to arrive in 6 hours, according to the readings. Amber appeared from her tactical post and asked, "Sir, do you believe we can actually accomplish this to slow them down to a point where it matters?" After giving it some thought, Eric came to the conclusion that we cannot, given our current situation. Most formidable fleet or arsenal, but rather due to the fact that we possess an advantage over the Invarians. Comprehend the concept of the human determination to endure, Sir Eric grinned faintly. We have persevered over seemingly insurmountable obstacles, facing foes that should have vanquished us at various points in our history. We figured out how to change it so that he could gaze at the starfield on the main screen. When the Invarian fleet shows around, we're going to show them something about mankind that they won't soon forget. The crews of the 4 human warships double-checked their guns and engines as they waited in the asteroid field. They made sure everything was in working order. Nobody said a word because they were all prepared. Eric, positioned on the Defender's bridge, kept an eye on the long-range scanner as the fleet of Invarian ships drew rapidly near. As they move in perfect formation, all 200 ships remain silent. Recall the strategy, Eric said, and wait for Captain Rodriguez to give the go-ahead before taking any action. The minutes crept by, and as the Invarian fleet drew nearer, they failed to identifying the human spacecraft concealed within the asteroid field. Amber is now entering the action. Noted from her command post that, despite the stress, her voice remained calm as Eric nodded at his weapon. Thank you for your attention to this matter. The main Invarian fleet has started passing through the... They navigated the asteroid field with meticulous accuracy, avoiding the huge rocks, kept their formation tight and organized until they received a signal from Defiant. 3 rapid bursts of light that regular sensors can't detect yet appear to after receiving the signal from the human spacecraft. Kelly verified that Captain Rodriguez had begun the next step. Everyone, gather at the combat stations. Eric gave the order to be ready to advance on my mark. With its primary armaments aimed at 2 Invarian cruisers, Valiant emerged from behind a big rock and struck them with pinpoint accuracy. The alien ship's engine parts were damaged right away, and the whole Invarian fleet was engulfed in chaos. They started to face the Valiant in response. And now, Eric ordered them to stop. The defense drew its weapons and launched itself from its concealed location, aiming at the Invarian rear portion. Assembly and launched more extraterrestrial vessels suffered damage simultaneously while the human ships dared to maneuver swiftly, attacking and shifting targets as Dauntless and Resolute launched separate attacks. Surprisingly, the flawless formation of the Invarian fleet started to crack a little when some ships maneuvered to confront the Valiant. Others approached the defense, and their coordinated actions stumbled, sought to counter assaults emanating from several sources. It's working, Amber said with astonishment. They can't. Eric saw the tactical performance as the Invarians struggled to retain formation in the face of attacks from many directions. Adjust to human strategies, their hive-mind interaction, which was often a plus. Eric starts Phase 2 with a vulnerability that prevents them from responding effectively to the chaotic attack pattern. Insisted that the 4 human spacecraft perform a complicated array of maneuvers, which they darted asteroids were launched at Invarian spacecraft and then vanished. In response, the Invarians fired back, but their weapons missed. Most often collide with asteroid fields or empty space when passing the inevitable. Admiral anger welled up within Zealand as he saw his once perfect fleet in shambles. For little, his whole invading force was being disrupted by human ships, which were aiming at the lead human. Ships under his command started concentrating their fire, and the Invarian fleet followed suit. The human ship's shields were damaged by numerous alien energy beams as the Valiant was under heavy assault. According to Kelly, revealed that Defender Eric acted swiftly to back Captain. The ships attacking the Valiant, the Defender, are Rodriguez's primary targets. Sped up its approach to the epicenter of the conflict, where it unleashed a barrage of cannon fire that took down many Nelvarian ships. The Invarian assault on the Valiant waned when Dauntless and Resolute arrived and joined the fray, bolstering their firepower. Bravely fought to stave off the new danger, but the harm had already been done. Advises Captain Rodriguez to remove Eric from the situation after Kelly stated that the shield has failed and that they are receiving direct shots to the ship. The Valiant started to pull away from the action, trailing debris as the commander gave the order to protect her departure. Surrounding it in a protective shield, the other 3 human spacecraft vented their atmosphere from various hull breaches. The Vigarians have regrouped and sent a warning that they are adjusting to our strategies. On the tactical monitor, Eric could make out that the extraterrestrial fleet was taking greater initiative to maneuver. They're learning about Phase 3 now. And ships are splitting out from the main group to pursue individual targets. Ships crewed by humans unleashed a barrage of electromagnetic pulses after activating specially designed gadgets. The Invarian spacecraft was bombarded with a plethora of confused signals, due to inaccurate sensor readings in the area surrounding the asteroid field. As a result, their sensors decelerated and they started shooting at what seemed to be ghosts rather than actual targets. Their targeting systems are muddled, according to Brad's assessment from engineering. Start the withdrawal. Eric gave the order for all ships to return to their secondary positions. Taking advantage of the chaos, 4 human warships snuck away, reassembled at a safe distance, and evaluated the significant portions of the Valiant's hull were damaged, and her primary weapon systems were compromised. Players weren't online. The Dauntless and Resolute took moderate damage, while the Defender did the best with just minor. Infrastructure impacted. What was the number of Invarian ships that were disabled? Eric asked Amber. Amber said. Examined her measurements, which showed that 17 were either completely destroyed or seriously damaged, while 31 were somewhat damaged. Eric chimed in, saying, "We hurt them, sir, and delayed them," as she glanced up with a little smile. As the rescue workers worked, the face of our mission captain, Rodriguez, came on the transmission screen. In addressing the issue of the Valiant's bridge, she remarked, "Good work, everyone." Her forehead was hurting and she was in obvious discomfort. The Nelvarians they've entirely halted their progress as they attempt to decipher our sensor jamming. How much longer until they figure out, resolve it? Asking, how about hours or even a day if we're luck on our side, Rodriguez said. But the Valiant just can't handle another battle like this. Eric thought about their alternatives. We had to get the Valiant back on the road after we lost control of the engine and the life support system failed on all 3 floors. Commander Simmons confirmed that the Resolute could accompany the crew back to Earth when asked by Captain Simmons, the head of safety, but that, "I'll be satisfied with only the 2 ships, the Dauntless and you, for my plans," as Eric correctly said. Keep the Nelvarians on their toes by persistently bothering them. As the captains had already discussed, Rodriguez eventually nodded solemnly at Eric after swiftly going over the specifics. Time was of the essence. "No need to take any excessive risks, Commander Wells. We will acquire Earth as soon as possible. At the allotted time, Eric assured us that the Resolute will assume position next to they set out on their trek back to Earth, with Valiant in tow as the Defender and Dauntless hid once again. 2 spacecraft would go up against an increasing number of asteroids. The crew of the Defender remained silent on the bridge while they celebrated their survival aboard the Armada. Fight, but the next one was sure to be more difficult. The Invarians, meantime, were learning to adapt and were asking, "Do you believe Earth is going to be ready on time?" Eric glanced over the strategic plan as Amber whispered in inquiry. "Showcase the Invarian fleet's continued disarray, but its eventual recovery, I guess I don't know," he confessed. "But delaying them by an hour gives Earth another hour to get ready, and time is of the essence right now." He faced his team and turned to face the most important thing they could provide their people: rest. When the Invarians arrived, once again, we will be prepared for the second round. The team got back to work with the same resolute spirit they'd brought to the first. Did something quite extraordinary today. They demonstrated that the Invarians may end up injured, bewildered, or after what seemed like an eternity, the Nelvarians finally encountered an adversary they couldn't easily vanquish, a first for their kingdom. The Defender and Dauntless persisted in their hit-and-run attacks after meeting mankind for 2 further days. Upon engaging the Invarian fleet, they would launch a swift attack before vanishing into the shadows of adjacent objects or amid asteroids. Moons, the extraterrestrials' progress was hindered with each assault. Each hour gained more time for. Dauntless lost its primary engines during the last strike and drifted in at a tremendous cost to Earth, attempting to fix the Defender's failing shields. When half of its weapon systems were offline working nonstop to keep their ship fighting, the crew was weary. Eric studied on the Defender's bridge. The Invarian fleet was moving again, this time with, according to the most recent sensor data. In order to avoid ambush, they have adjusted to our "we need something new," he informed his top commanders in a quick discussion. Tactics. Brad Miller massaged his looks. "Like you're getting tired. Commander, we've pushed the engines beyond their safety limits and we re-down to 30% on fuel, ammunition for the primary weaponry," Amber added. And Eric nodded, indicating that he comprehended their things were becoming quite bad, so I said, "What happened to the new targeting algorithm you were developing?" Amber straightened slightly. "It's prepared, sir. It should enable us to strike their command ships with more precision, despite our weakened weaponry." "Great, we'll concentrate on that." "As we concentrated our last arsenal on their command ships," Eric said, looking across at the communications officer. "Do you have any updates from Captain Wilson on the Dauntless's engine repairs, Kelly?" "Moving forward, but at a snail's pace." Eric was aware that they needed at least 8 more hours, but we'll draw them in 8 hours. The Invarian Navy would be there far faster. Away from the Dauntless, he chose to provide them time to do the repairs as the senior officers worriedly looked at each other. That meant the defense would have to equip the ship for battle while facing the whole Invarian fleet alone, which was obvious to everyone. After 30 minutes, Eric gave the order to depart. And although everyone else went back to their posts, Paul Evans, the head of security, stayed. He said, "Behind you, sir, the crew is prepared to fight. But you should be aware that we all..." Eric put his hand on Paul's shoulder and said, "This mission might be our last. The Defender departed, but it will be worthwhile if we extend Earth's time." Emerging from its concealed location, it strained its engines as it hurried towards the asteroid field's periphery. Up ahead, with the command, "Open a channel," Eric gave the Invarian fleet the go-ahead to keep moving towards Earth. Radio waves. Kelly typed into her computer, "Channel open, sir." Eric straightened his back as this is Commander Eric Wells of the Navy speaking to the hostile Invarian fleet. "Earthship Defender, we have proven for days that people would not give up or be defeated. It is time to turn back now, or..." Despite the entire might of Earth's defenses, nobody reacted at first, and then Admiral Zealand was seen on the main screen by the alien's complex eyes, which appeared in order to analyze Eric using icy logic. Commander Zexalon's voice rasped, "Your rudimentary ship has been little more than a nuisance, and your strategies have become predictable, leading to your certain loss." "Is certain to happen, maybe," even Eric calmly responded, "but how many additional ships are you planning to? Would your fleet be even less formidable? When confronted by our primary defense force, the Invarian, if you were to lose before you ever reach Earth..." The Admiral's teeth chattered during what should have been a humorous moment. "Delaying our progress and, yes, even harming some of our..." The game ended when the screen went dark, yet we have many vessels while you have few. 50 ships of the Invarian fleet split off from the main group as soon as the fleet changed direction. Group and advanced on the Defender's position. "They're now chasing us," as Amber warned, having caught the bait. Eric gave the Defender full speed as he rushed towards the gas giant, hunting for the Dauntless, an enormous planet on the outside of the solar system, which posed a threat due to its powerful gravitational pull and whirling storms guide the Invarian ships. But they also provided hiding spots for their cargo. They were drawing nearer and closer, and their weapons were already slashing through the air with energy beams as they encircled the human ship. Evasive maneuvers that Eric ordered. Make sure they don't get away with it. With deft dexterity, Shooter Sam Cooper operated the steering controls as the defense twisted. Although twisting and turning to make itself harder to hit, it was unable to avoid every obstacle. The spacecraft took a number of blows, causing its failing shields to drop to a 15% level. Brad announced by engineering just one more direct strike and they'll entirely collapse, leaving gas giant Eric in utter disarray. Sam said, "We will unmake it," when Amber questioned how much longer the question at the present pace. When he saw their tactical show close up on us, Eric took one more risk. "Please turn off all electronics save the engines and forward shields. The new targeting program is ready to be fired at my order." With a final burst of power, the Defender rushed forward, fueling its engines. The ship trembled as it exceeded its design limitations. The Invarian ships persisted in firing, but most of their bullets were unsuccessful. The Defender's back was directly hit by one of Sam's haphazard course corrections, according to Paul's account. Emergency bulkheads triggered on decks 12 to 14 to depressurize the area, announcing that the Defender dove into the whirling clouds of the enormous planet in the gas giant's upper atmosphere. The Invarian ships paused at the atmospheric boundary as a raging storm shook the ship fiercely behind them. Observing that they're smarter than that, Kelly noted that they're not following us in, and Eric responded by saying that they will wait for us to arrive. As he asked Amber, "Are you currently tracking their command ship?" Battled the turbulent air as she operated her console to get target lock and set it up near the periphery of our. We muster all of the Defender's remaining weapons and fire them from a distance. Under the cloud cover, the Invarian was targeted by specially designed missiles and energy beams that were fired upwards. Admiral Zexalon got vital warnings as his fleet was on the bridge of the inevitable, observed by his sensor officer as approaching fire from within the planet's atmosphere impossible. According to Zexalon, as no spacecraft could successfully attack humans from that location, the Soyuz, the command ship of Zexalon, was one of 3 Invarian warships hit by missiles. Unavoidable trembled as blasts ripped through its lower levels of damage assessment. When Zexalon's engineering officer asked about the primary power systems, he got a negative response. Propellant-damaged weaponry operating at 60% capacity during the initial period. Throughout his extensive the fact that these people battled like no other species left Zexon feeling uneasy about his job. The gas giant's atmosphere has ever faced. The defense was failing. We can't remain here since the systems were overwhelmed and the hull plates collapsed. Did our assault succeed after the length of time? Brad cautioned that the hull's integrity is critical. Regardless of Eric's request, Amber verified strikes on 3 ships by checking her sensors. Featuring what seems to be their command ship, the bridge crew let out a brief cheer as we prepared to leave. Plan Eric instructed us to head straight towards the polar opening at top speed. The ship's defense fought their way through the thick air as they raced towards a less congested area close to the planet's pole. Hardly managing to stay afloat as they climbed out of the clouds, they caught sight of something. Out of nowhere, hundreds of additional ships were coming into view. For a few seconds, Eric mistook them for more Invarian. Upon receiving reinforcements, Kelly said with delight, "Sir, those are Earth ships. The defense fleet is here." Upon which the countenance of Admiral Garcia materialized. "Commander Wells, your decision to postpone worked. You granted us the time we required, and now the whole fleet of Earth is prepared for combat." Eric cast his gaze across the strategic show with disbelief that 350 human vessels, including enormous new dreadnoughts that outshone even the Defender's voice, was filled with emotion as Admiral Eric of the Invarian fleet exclaimed, "Devastating damage. We require aid immediately." Garcia reassured him that assistance was en route. "With the arrival of rescue ships, you and your crew proved that they are not invincible, and that is more than enough." After enduring a brutal assault, Eric turned to his weary team and gazed at them. They had completed their job and had bought Earth more time. In order to be ready, they had demonstrated that humans would be difficult to overcome for 3 after centuries of easy global conquest. The Invarians were finally stopped by a single human battleship, blocked their way, and from that moment on the tide turned. The conflict at Alpha Centauri would go down in history as the Invarian Empire and humanity's first Great War, but as originally demonstrated by a solitary spacecraft called Defender. Even the acknowledged someone having the guts to stand up to the mightiest empire may challenge it.